Okay, so a very good morning to all the delegates present on the virtual dais, our invited guest speaker, Professor Smriti Kumar Sarkar, and beloved students. The third day of the induction cum orientation program for the newly admitted undergraduate students of IIEST Shibpur is all set to commence. We have a series of interesting events lined up today. The first one being an invited lecture delivered by Professor Smriti Kumar Sarkar, Vice Chairman of the Indian Museum. Professor Sarkar has been the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Burdwan. He is the recipient of several accolades and prestigious awards, including the National Scholarships, the UGC Junior Research Fellowships, the UGC Teacher Fellowship, research projects funded by prestigious Technology Sweden, Dhaka University, Planning Commission of India, the Asiatic Society, Public Service Commission of Punjab and Bihar, and several other universities across the country. In 2012, Professor Sarkar held the prestigious position of ICCR Chair Professor to the Yerevan State University, Armenia, on Government of India deputation. Sir has published several chapters and papers in nationally and internationally acclaimed journals. On behalf of the entire IIEST fraternity, we welcome you, sir, to the occasion and thank you for kindly consenting to be our guest speaker. The topic of discussion today is India Unknown, Revisiting Early Technologies. So let me share with the audience a very brief abstract of the talk which is going to be delivered. This lecture seeks to acquaint the audience with ancient Indian technologies about which very little is known in general, due to absence of a viable text on India's technological past. It begins with the question of why ancient technologies matter for a country like India, which is distinguished by its long civilizational continuity. Technological past is not just an academic issue, but an important segment of national heritage and a part of our reckoning. The conventional notion of the technology equated with Western knowledge and material systems has blinded us of our rightful heritage, an issue most often mystified rather than analyzed. What is hugely ignored is that in 1750, India produced one-fourth of the world's manufactures, which required an extensive manufacturing sector involving technologies that evolved locally. An important question the lecture proposes to look into. Given its limited scope, the lecture plans to outline only the core sectors of early Indian technologies widely considered to be India's contribution to the world civilization. This is posited against the dominant historical notions of technology as linear, teleological, and ubiquitous. Instead, it is focused on the local productive processes and the movement beyond the localities to connect the region and the supra-region. So once again, thank you, sir. With this, let me hand over the podium to Professor Smriti Kumar Sarkar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And nice to talk to the participants, the invisible audience. As we all know that we are passing through a very critical phase of the entire world civilization, the like of which the world has witnessed earlier also. But this is for the first time that we have the technologies. We are not homebound now, although we are homebound, but we can interact with each other thanks to the development of technology. There lies the word, the importance of the word technology. As you all know, that technology is the theme of the 21st century. It has changed everything, of which you are very much aware. And you are the prospective engineers. You have interest in technologies. So I consider myself a privileged person. I'm a historian, a privileged person to interact with the young technocrats of India, the future of India, of our nation, who will build up the nation in the coming decades. Now, I would draw your attention to the very title of my lecture, India Unknown. Why do I call India unknown? Because all of you are aware. হ্যাঁ প্রশান্ত বলুন আরে লেকচার তো হচ্ছে ঠিক আছে so you might be feeling that India is very much known to you to us. India is our country. What I am really focusing on is that we know India just as a country. And yes, its contemporary state of affairs. And in the concerned areas of your academic focus. But if we ask you that what is the real standing of India in the world civilization, I fear, at least my experience of interacting with a wide network of young teachers and learners across the world and beyond, my experience is that very little is known about India's contribution to the world civilization. Now, this is a very wide field which cannot be conceived or cannot be delivered in one lecture of 90 minutes. So my plan is to just give an eye-hole view of the importance of India's reckoning in the world civilization, so far as the material civilization is concerned. Just an eye-hole view, and in 70 minutes or so, and I will leave 20 minutes for you to interact. Now, by the word India unknown, I mean that not much is known about the material standard of India, the material standing of India in the earlier period. When we talk of the world civilization, everyone feels proud that it is China, it is Egypt. Egypt is distinguished by its Great Pyramid. China is distinguished by its Great Wall. And the earlier Persia, the present-day Iran, is distinguished by its hydrographical sciences. So these are the areas by which the ancient civilizations are known. But when we talk of India, we cannot identify a single piece by which one can have an idea of the depth of the material civilization that India really stood for. Of course, I believe many of you, while visiting Delhi, must have seen the Iron Pillar, which is considered as the rustless wonder of the world. And this is up to the UNESCO. So, in this lecture, my second, little defining would involve the term early technologies. How early is this early technologies? Whenever we talk of ancient Indian technologies, there's a general inhibition that early technologies means whole set of mythology, legends, and a good deal of mystification. There is a largely non-academic literature or the claims in the public domain, social side domain, that we had everything in the past, that we could fly planes in the past. So I am not going to talk about these things. If you follow the abstract, I have clearly stated that the issue of ancient Indian technologies or the early technologies have been largely mystified. And uh, the mystification is largely because of the absence of a viable text. The text that can be really documented, the text that can be challenged in the World Forum. Here in this lecture, I would just give you some introductory ideas about certain areas of early Indian technologies. By early, I mean the pre-colonial, the pre-British. Why did I introduce the word pre-British or the pre-colonial? That is pre-1750. When did the colonial process of empire building in the Indian subcontinent started? Because uh, there is a general conventional notion that the term technology, this is a very interesting term. Since you are going to be the future engineers or you are interested in different disciplines of material science, you need to concentrate on the particular word. Now, the origin of this particular word is essentially European, the Western. So I can't give you the entire process by which the word got the present form. It started from technique, technology. Technology is a term associated with the the English Industrial Revolution. Since the English Industrial Revolution changed the face of the world, the quality of life and the quality of the national, the relationship between different nations. So it is the British sense of technology that prevailed over the entire world. Now, with rapid use of the term technology, if you define, what does it mean? It means the way of doing something. There's a French sociologist who once stated that even the art of swimming could be considered a swimming technology. That's why some of the swimmers got medals, international recognition, while millions of people swim. So the term technology refers to a particular skill of doing something in a better form. So this is the sense that spread across the world, and with this word, it is commonly believed that what we mean by technology today is a verbatim reproduction of the Western civilization. So it is commonly believed that the technology, everything we see around, everything we use today, if we go to its origin, visibly come from the West. Come from the West or the North, as it represents the North-South divide of the world. So it is either European or American. And to put it broadly, it belonged to the Western part of the world. Everything, the computer, everything. So there is a notion that what the material civilization is today is actually a contribution of the West to the entire world. Here, the real question comes. The point is, how old is the Western civilization? The history of the development of material science, or more spatially, technological science activities that started developing in the West and eventually spread to the entire world. How old is this process? At best, it could be 350, or if we stretch it further, just 400 years old. So whatever we see today and whatever we claim as Western technology, Western civilization is just a contribution of 400 years. But we know that the world civilization is not only of 400 years. So there were some countries which had civilizational continuity for millennium. India is certainly one of them. There's some 20 years back, an American historian wrote a very significant book, very significant, very pleasant, readable, just like a novel. And he talked about three civilizations of the world, and he called these are the epicenters of world civilization. As you all know, this is India, China, and Egypt. So if you ignore the 400 years of the world civilization, and if you look back beyond these 400 years, I mean the relatively recent 400 years, then what we see that the epicenter of world civilization was mainly in the East and not in the West. So these are the three, hubs: India, China, and Egypt. Then there is the wide connectivity between these three hub centers again. So that's a different story. I'm not taking you to those things. Today, my focus will be on India. And I will give you certain specific areas where India invented these technologies, and from India, it spread to the entire world. So, without further digressing, the point comes straight to one of the core sectors with which I would like to start. That is zinc. Zinc is a chemical, and later the reduction of zinc into industrial product is a technology that was evolved in India. And you will be surprised to know that for long 4,000 years, it remained a monopoly of India. It remained a monopoly of India. If you look at, if you go to the Google and search for the contemporary position of zinc production in the world, China comes first. And India is at the 5th rank, preceded by China, Peru, Australia, and America. So the Chinese started producing, the China somehow smuggled the knowledge of extracting zinc from the mines and smelting it, turning it into industrial product only in the 17th century. So, and when did this zinc was first produced in, the knowledge of zinc as a useful chemicals and subsequently as a metal developed in India? You will be surprised to know that it was in the 2nd millennium BC. 2nd millennium BC, that is 2000 years before the birth of Christ. This knowledge was innovated in India. And which was the region of India that developed this? It was in Western India, specifically Rajasthan. I will give you some specific data so that if any one of you gets interested, you can further proceed. In the 2nd millennium BC, it was used in the regions which is Western India, from which it spread to Uzbekistan, Iran, Syria, Iraq, and Israel. So these are very important zones, cultured zones, commercial zones, with which there was long connectivity. So from India, it shifted to these areas through traders, through merchant contacts, and through cultural contacts. Those who are interested, you can read one of my article later. So you can go to the Google and see. And zinc metal, the large-scale production of zinc as a metal started in 12th century. This is very much in record. This is very much in record and recorded by European observers from different countries. So now some literary evidence. I will give you some literary evidence. The first literary evidence of the production of zinc we find in Arthashastra. In Arthashastra, which is third century BC. I mean, all of you must have heard of the Mauryan Empire, Mauryan Empire, and so you know that this text, extremely important text, which is a political economy, which is a text on how to build up a national economy, was written by an unknown author, later on attributed to Chanakya. This is the first text which refers to production of zinc. This text has a long chapter on metallurgy, reduction of iron and other things. Zinc is one of them. The next important document, the text, is Charak Samhita. Charak Samhita, that is 300 to 500 AD, 3rd to 5th century AD, that is after Christ. So during this period, the Charak Samhita, the famous physician, ancient Indian physician Charak, internationally recognized, he referred to zinc, to the use of zinc as a medicine, and this is very much recognized even today. There are some of the zinc is still used all over the world for treating some specific disorders, physical disorders. And finally, there is another important text called Rashoratna Samuchaya. Rashoratna Samuchaya, this is 13th century AD, when Northern India was ruled by Delhi Sultans. It was Rashoratna Samuchaya, a Sanskrit text, which was intensively read and worked upon by the first industrial entrepreneur of our land, Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai. So, if you read the works of Acharya Prafulla Chandra Rai, who was the first chemical scientist, engineer, and the industrial entrepreneur of our country, he worked upon this Rashoratna Samuchaya. So, zinc was later on used for medicinal purpose, and it was later on developed by other European scientists. The modern technical name of zinc, largely it is in the European name. I mean, it was discovered by some, the name was given by some one Italian fellow, and then so the present technical name of zinc, we don't use the Sanskrit name that was used also in the Arabic world, but the present European name is widely used. You can see it. So in the earlier time, prior to the European naming of zinc by the European scientist and chemical scientist in particular, in Asia, all over Asia, this was known as Jashoda, and even in the Arabic world, the zinc went by the same name. So I will give another example that will make these things more clear. So from second millennium BC right up to 16th century, this remained as a monopoly product of India, and which later on passed to the knowledge was smuggled by the Chinese, and China seized the leadership. And China, because of its, large deposits, mineral deposits there, so China developed it. So this is the position with zinc. And if you look at some trade statistics, there are very significant trade statistics also, which suggest that uh, in the 16th century, in one location, it's called the place is called Zarwar in Rajasthan. This nearly million tons of metallic zinc and zinc oxide was produced in India from 12th to 16th centuries, and it was very widely exported. Zawar, the zinc mines at Zawar near Udaipur. And from that time, there is extensive archaeological evidence. That is the smelting furnaces, the evidence of early reduction of these have been clearly discovered by the archaeologists and have been widely documented. So the first contribution is zinc. Now, what is the use of zinc? What is the use of zinc? Zinc, as you all know, was mixed with copper to produce brass. Now, India as a country witnessed a major development in the metallurgical science of the non-ferrous metal. So I will just give you one example, which is widely considered as a unique product. All over the world, it is recognized. In many foreign countries, you will see it in the museum, and even in Geneva center of study center on Sun. There also you will see this is placed. In Physics Institute of Physics also, this is placed as a wonderful symbol of physical balance. But this product is made of brass. And you can very well imagine what is the product I'm referring to. It is the India's Nataraj. So, the development of brass, the non-ferrous metal, reached a certain stage in India that enabled the Indian artisans who were not read, who didn't have any degrees, who didn't study in any metallurgical institute. But over the years, through trial and error method, through empirical observations, they had mastered the art of this metallurgical science in such a way that they could produce the cheapest wares, the cheapest brass wares for the common peoples, for the use of the common people, as also the costliest brassware for the use of the royalties. The kings, the monarchs, the sultans, all were very famous, and this was extensively exported also, particularly to Southeast Asia, to Southeast Asian market. Now, after this, I will introduce you to another important thing, which is considered as the wonder of India. This is iron technology. Iron. Many of you may not be knowing that India is widely considered as the mother of textiles. Textiles. This is the India's greatest contribution to the material civilization of the world, from Herodotus down to European observers in the 19th century. Everyone were expressed their wonder and surprise to see the quality of the product. I'm coming to this point later. That is, India is the mother country of textiles, cotton textiles, I mean. But we do not know that India was also the mother of steel. Steel. I mean, steel. Steel is a special kind of ferrous metal, which I am not supposed to explain before you. But can you imagine that from the Roman Empire, down to the time, down to 1855, when Besmear process was invented, this whole period, the best possible steel was produced in India. If you want to know more about this, just type Wootz, WOOTZ, on your computer and give a search, and then you will find the wonder. WOOTZ, Wootz. Wootz is a term given by the Roman traders. Roman traders. We do not know by which name this product was then known in India. But all over India, right from Netarhat, Ranchi, down up to Karnataka and Golconda region, the Andhra region, and some localized parts of the Uttarakhand, which is Nainital, all these areas were major iron producing zone. Now, iron was produced in different parts of the world. But what the barefooted, the unknown blacksmith tribes of India, the blacksmiths, mostly they are tribal people. They used to live in the forest. They used to move from one region to other, catering their skill to different customers. Because in those days, the demand for iron wares was essentially limited. People didn't need much of iron. So these blacksmith tribes used to move from one part of India to other. There is a long trail of movement from Ranchi, Netarhat down up to Karnataka. And you'll be surprised to know that to complete the one movement, it needed 3 generations. I am talking of the time when there was no roads, when there was no trains, and when there was no other automobiles. So they used to move. They used to move only through those areas where these ores were found. And on the way, they used to settle. They used to peddle their trade. They used to cater to their customers, I mean village-based customers, the kings. So these blacksmiths, tribal blacksmiths, or if we call backward clustered blacksmiths, they were undistinguished, unknown, but it was they who produced the best steel possible in the world. And during the time I'm talking of, because the first reference of iron smelting came in Arthashastra that I referred to just now. So Arthashastra is a text, is a 3rd century BC text. So if you want to read, there's a fantastic book by a German scholar, Kangle, on Arthashastra. You need not to depend on any Indian scholar. Let it mystified. So you read the book by German scholar, and you'll be surprised to know the kind of knowledge that existed in India with regard to this metallurgical science. But the only problem is this, that this knowledge was not structured. This knowledge was not institutionalized. And this knowledge was not documented properly. We have certain stray references to certain work groups. We have archaeological evidence of the kind of the product that they produced, but we do not know what exactly was the method by which they used to work. And we came to know about their method only after this stray forest space, diverse small tribal groups came into contact with the European surveyors, European travelers, European administrators, and European observers. But for before that, I would first give you certain historical reference by which you can know that this metal existed, and this was widely recognized all over the Eastern world. Firstly, the Romans, the Roman traders, they used to import the steel regularly to Rome, that is the present day Italy, the Roman Empire. Italy was the hub center. And after the collapse of the Roman Empire, this metal used to move to West Asia. West Asia. What was the civilization most dominant in West Asia in those days? It was, of course, the Persian Empire. Whenever we talk of Persian Empire, we talk of a sword. It's called Damascus. Damascus sword, extremely famous. Damascus. You just type on the Google Damascus and you read the literature. Damascus is a sword. You know that this Damascus sword was made of the Indian steel. Persia made the best that it required. So what was the system? The Persian traders, they used to visit India, Golconda region particularly, stayed there, they lived there, and engaged the local blacksmiths to produce steel for them. So for 3 to 6 months before the rainy season sets in, they stayed there and they sponsored the production, and they took the entire product of the engaged blacksmiths, and with which they again left for Persia. This is not a cock and bull story I am giving you. This is the document which is found, this is a statement which is found, which is documented by two sources. One is the European, from, as you know, from 17th century, the European visitors, travelers started coming into India. I mean, the series of, before that, the Portuguese came. Portuguese were another traders who took zinc to zinc to Portugal, from which the zinc passed. The Europeans came in contact with these chemicals, come metal, and then they started zinc. Its European name, the Italian, the Spanish. You look at the map of Portugal. days also, this Damascus sword, the production of this Damascus sword was a royal enterprise. It was the enterprise of the Persian monarch. It was extremely profitable trade indeed. And next important source of this trade is the Egyptian records. Now, in Egypt, there is a system that whatever is imported to Egypt and whatever is exported from Egypt, everything was recorded in a huge register, in a massive register, just like the present day system followed in any international port. Now, these records that were obviously in the Egyptian language had been translated into English later on by a European scholar. Extensive work. And it was eventually produced in a volume, which I read, and many people read like me. So you disown this. So that is the still. And regarding what I am telling you, that nowhere in no part of the world the steel could be produced in those days, right from the beginning, the first century AD, if we see, down up to the 1855, which is the time of the Bismarck, the invention of the Bismarck process. And I'm sure you know about the Bismarck process. So I'm just giving you one quote by a French traveler. His name is Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. He left an observation in 1679. I quote: "The Persians are excellent artists at damasquing or engraving Damasquoise upon swords, knives, and the like. But the nature of the steel which they make use of, which very much contributes to their art, in which regard they cannot perform the same work neither upon their own nor ours." That suggests that they also had steel, but those steels could not be used for preparing this this world-class swords. And he writes, "This steel is brought from Golconda, India, which is the only sort of steel which can be used in damasking the sword." This is one. Now I am giving you another statement 100 years later by a British scientist, president of the British Royal Society. British Royal Society. Now, after several rounds of examination, this British Royal Society president received a small quantity of urch from India. Somebody had sent it for observation and whether this could be produced in Britain. So he wrote, "After several rounds of examination by experts, it was found similar to the best steel available in Britain and excellently adapted for the purpose of fine cutlery and surgical instruments. But on..." Hello? কি হলো? কি হয়?
Sir, you're audible, sir. We can hear you clearly.
Hello? Can you see
Yes.
me?
Yes, sir, you're audible as well as visible, sir. Please continue, sir.
Okay. My screen got black. That's why I'm afraid.
No,
Okay.
sir, you're not. You're
I'm more
audible and visible perfectly, sir.
okay. I'm more familiar with Google Meet. This is something problematic. So in 1825, till further, some 50, some 40 years later, you see, in 1825, a British manufacturer took out a patent for converting iron into steel by exposing it to the action carbureted hydrogen gas in a closed vessel at a high speed temperature, by which means process of conversion is completed in a few hours. In a few hours. But again, that the result was not comparable to what the Indian blacksmiths produced in their simple smelting furnace. So I believe my lecture is today not on the steel itself. Otherwise, I could show you these furnaces also. Now, as a result of these, in the mid 17th century, the Dutch traders and the Dutch entrepreneurs who had, I mean, the Dutch had, a large empire in the Southeast Asia. The entire Indonesia was a Dutch colony. So the Dutch found that instead of importing steel or iron from Europe to Indonesia to for their empire building activities, it is much easier to import best quality steel from Golconda to Indonesia, which is a much shorter voyage, which involved much shorter voyage. So what they started to develop uh, a blending of the traditional melting furnace used by blacksmiths with the Dutch uh, furnace of the day. And there are some kind of adjustments, and the result was the larger volume of production that was not possible by the blacksmiths, Indian blacksmiths, in the way they were conversant with. So this is a this is another area. This is another area where we can see that important uh, this important contribution, which is a product. And two evidence. There are many archaeological evidence all over India of the kind of metallurgical knowledge involving ferrous metal that existed in earlier times. Two are most important. One is that I told you a little earlier was the and the Iron Pillar of Delhi, which is located in the Old Fort, and the other is the Konark rocks, the Konark beams. So you must see next time when you visit Konark temple, you must see these beams, these huge beams that supported the entire superstructure, superstructure of the temple that no longer exists now. It's a huge superstructure, but you can have a clear idea of the beams, which is 30 feet long and nearly 2 feet wide. Uh, and many people, many metallurgical scientists harness, that remains a big question. So this is another area we Indians, I mean the general Indians I am talking of, do not know really. I believe I am still audible. Hello.
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Okay. Thank you very
Audible.
much. Okay. And so after zinc and orch, I will give you a third product that is also considered India's contribution to the world, and the very name of the product. So from metallurgy, I will shift your attention, I would draw your attention to uh, agricultural product rather. This is also a kind of knowledge that evolved in India. The next product that I am talking of is indigo. You cannot really assess the importance of this dye today. In the living in the world that is dominated by chemical dyes. But there was a time, chemical dye had been discovered by the German chemist only in the mid 19th century. And before that, indigo remains the most coveted article of dyeing, used for dyeing all over the world, particularly in Europe, in Latin America, and of course in West Asia nearby. Uh, why was indigo so important? Uh, Indigo, just on the issue of indigo and the control of indigo trade, a number of wars had been fought. In
Sir, just a minute, sir. You are no longer visible,
Yes,
although you're audible, sir.
yes,
Uh,
yes. Hello.
somehow, sir, your
Yes.
video is not.
What's the problem? Video is not working. I do
Oh,
not want to
sorry.
know. Yeah, we must. There is a window. We meet some issues. Try to download again. This is a problematic. Why you don't use the Google? That is, this is for the first time I am delivering a lecture on this mode.
So we can hear you, sir. No problem. We can hear you. So just bear with us for 2 minutes. Sir is maybe having a technical problem. Just let us sort it out. In the meantime, for the interactive session, I have already written in the chat box. If you have any questions, any queries which you would like to be addressed, do mention it in the chat box. I'll be monitoring the chat box at regular intervals. Alternatively, you can also raise your hand, unmute yourself and speak. So please write down your queries and questions for the upcoming interactive session here. হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ স্যার উনি ডিসকানেক্টেড হয়ে গেছেন। Professor got disconnected, I think, sir. He has not rejoined. No, sir, rejoin accordingly. He got disconnected in the meantime. I'm collecting the question answers from the students, but sir, in the middle of the lecture, got disconnected and he has not yet rejoined. Okay, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. We can see you.
Okay, okay. Very sorry. There was a system failure. Uh, so let's me let me get to the point. I was talking to you of Indigo, another India's contribution to world civilization, which was the most important dyeing agent and used all over the world. And I told you that a number of war had been fought on the monopoly use of this dye, which was very costliest in those days, fought in different regions over the control of this trade, on the movement of this product. And I'm telling you, I'm just giving you an idea how costly it was. Now, in those days, we use you use cash card, we use credit card, debit card. So it was so valuable a product, it considered so valuable in West Asia, that when Emperor Jahangir's mother was preparing her bags for a Hajj, I mean the ship that she was supposed to move to the Hajj, that she ordered that ship, a good consignment of indigo be loaded into the ship so that it could be readily sold in the West Asia, and she could do the necessary marketing with the proceeds. So this indigo was a product that was widely used in different parts of India. I'm just giving an idea how this product spread from India to the world. And here I am taking advantage of the using the etymology as a point of indication. Etymology, you certainly know, it's the science of using the word, the technique of using the word, the language. So I am quoting from uh, a British author's book, namely Jean Balfour. Uh, he wrote a very interesting book on indigo a few years back. So Jean Balfour Paul, uh, she used etymological interference to outline the root of the diffusion. So I will start with Greek, the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks called this product as idikon. Indicon in the Greek language means blue dye from India. Blue dye from India. An Elizabethan act, that is in Elizabethan period, roughly 16th century, 16th, 17th century, Elizabethan act in 16th century England referred to indigo. So in 16th century, indigo was known in England as nili, alias blue inde in Latin, blue inde. That is nili. You can very well recognize the word is Indian in origin. Romans, who spread the indigo through Europe, received it from Arab traders. Arab traders. And as you know, though in those days there was no sea trade, caravan trade that moved on the deserts and East Asia, exchanged their product in Alexandria. There are two routes, as you know, through China. Silk Route, Silk Route is again in the, circulation. So there was one Silk Route, and the other was a combination, a blended mode of sea voyage and the land route, that is from India to the Red Sea up to Alexandria, and then from Alexandria to Rome via Mediterranean. So it was a blended kind of trade routes. So the Arabs, to the Arabs, this product was known as nil, unnil, or nila. Nil, unnil, or nila. I am quoting from my own article, which has been included in a book on world textiles. Only Indian contribution to this book. It's a book on world textiles. So I'm quoting from my own. So from Arabs, the word nil, and nila traveled to the Spaniards. So from the Arabs, handed over to the Spanish traders, who carried it to the New World, that is Latin America, Brazil, Argentina, in those days, which were Spanish colonies. And in the New World, it was extensively cultivated. Mexico, particular. Mexico, all the colorful dress of which the indigo remained the most important element of dyeing. And all over Africa, their love for color. Some parts of Southeast Asia also, the love for color. Indonesia. So in all these regions, indigo remained the basic dyeing agent of producing their textiles and their attire. So then Portuguese pronounced it changed in England, and it was known as indigo. So it says clearly indigo, it's rooted to India. The word is rooted to India. And through land route via Lahore, via Multan, Lahore, and then through Afghanistan and to the rest of Central Asia. It's again problem. Again, there is a. So let me hurry up. So next time, sometime next, I will give you this entire how these things went on. And this indigo, the style. I mean, firstly the domestication of the plant. You must ask a question: who identified this plant? That it could be a very useful commercial item. So the domestication of the plant, commercialization, domestication of the plant, its reduction into an industrial product, and its commercialization. All three successive phases took place in India, and it is from India that this product spread to the entire world, in all the continents almost, and for nearly long centuries. Indigo, it's a imagination. Nil, as blue as the sky, as blue as the sea, and there are it's very much imprint into our legends, into our literature, both religious and secular, non-religious literature. And there is a fascination all over Asia for the color indigo, and there is also some kind of mystifications also, which I am not discussing now. So the point is that this entire knowledge of identifying the plant, domesticating the plant, its replication as an agricultural product, the reduction of the plant into a commercial product, and its commerce, entire remained in the Indian hands for long centuries. If it is traced to millennium period, it would not be wrong. And the important point that I would try to focus on, that this identification of the plant as a useful plant and its domestication and its replication were done by the forest-based people, whom much beyond the main focus of the civilizational focus, the forest-based, the common people. So there is a connectivity between the traders in the high up I refer to Jahangir's mother, and at the lower level, the common people who had done all these things. This is a major innovation for the rest of India. Unfortunately, because of the technical snag, I I lost some time, some nearly 30 minutes to interact with you. Otherwise, I had hope that I could further uh, extend this discussion to also to include textiles. Textiles. None other than Karl Marx himself. If you are popular with Marxist literature, Karl Marx himself. I just giving you one very interesting observation by Karl Marx. And when he denounced this, I mean, unrestricted import of Lancashire and Manchester textile product into India by the British traders, English traders, what he said? He said, I quote, the British inundated the very mother country of cotton with cottons. That is, the British flooded the very mother country of cotton, the very mother country of cotton with cottons. So this is a whole story, you know, how the English traders and the company destroyed our textile industry. But prior to this happened, this coming of the English, Indian textiles, Indian textiles was a major item of Asian trade, was a major item of Asian trade. In fact, it was a mode of marketing. That is, when the Indian traders used to take the shipload of textiles to countries like Indonesia, to African littoral country of the Indian Ocean littoral countries, to Southeast Asia, as far as Japan, and exchanged exchange the products of Southeast Asia with the textiles. What was the Southeast Asian product? The most important Southeast Asian product for which the entire world tried to grab on was the spices. Spices. So it was an exchange trade. The Southeast Asian spices, masala, the Southeast Asian spices. India is a land of spices, but the major production, the major, articles, spices articles came from Southeast Asia. So India was an entry point. You must have, when you visit the country, you must see that from the eastern seas, that is Bay of Bengal, Malacca Straits, the China Sea, the South China Sea, through all these areas, spices used to reach the eastern coastland of Indigo, the Coromandel the Coromandel coast, and from there the spices were taken to the Malabar coast, that is on the western side of India, by caravan traders. There are different modes. So at the Malabar, Golconda, light up to Calicut, here the European traders, the Arabic traders, Persian traders used to assemble, and they exchanged, they brought these spices to their lands. Why spices was so important? Because in those days there was no refrigeration, you know, and in Europe, in most of Europe, they used to kill their animals, and preserve the meat for the entire winter season. And for this preservation, the only way by which they could preserve this meat for their to be used for 5-6 months, even longer, because Europe has long winter. But the winter season, during the winter season, the only way to preserve them was spices, different types of spices. So spices was as important. But how the spices could be procured? The only land from where the Europeans and the Portuguese, the Latin Americans could procure the spices was India. And how did India get its spices? So much of how could India supply so much of spices? India exchanged her products. I mean textiles with spices from Southeast Asia. So this way, I can stretch the story to other lands also, particularly the littoral countries of Africa. Littoral countries of Africa, the Indian Ocean littoral countries, Madagascar, for instance. If you happen to have the good fortune to visit Madagascar, you will feel like that you are in a second Indian land, because the culture, the dress, the culinary style, the food, and the looks also are similar to Indian, because from time immemorial there is a good connectivity, there is a good exchange of population, of traders, of product, of culture, everything between India and Madagascar. So are different lands in Asia. So my point with the four examples, what I intend to suggest is that technology, what we mean generally today, and I would not quote, there is a very well recognized scholar today. Only last year he has published an article in which he referred that whatever we know technology today is a Western contribution. What we use today is Western contribution. I am not giving you the story how West could get the knowledge. That's a different part of my aspect. Because West started from scratch. In 17th century, if you look at the history of 16th century, 17th century Europe was as similar. Europe was much behind behind India and China. Even in 1750, Japan was far behind India. And I am not giving the statistics from my own imagination. All these have been very documented. So what is my point? The point is that the notion of unilinear movement of technology, that the movement of technology follows a particular line, and that the technology always comes from the West, comes from the north, as it is, because today in the academic world, the world is divided into is north-south divide. So it's not like that. Technology, the movement of technology is never linear. It could not be linear. So, but the last 400 years, it looked like that technology and the material civilization all came from the West. But if we but if we look beyond these 400 years, we see that technology, it was not ubiquitous. That the same technology prevailed all over the world, the same technology, the same use, the same evolution. No, it's a development of only contemporary period, in the period, the time which we live in. But technology has many facets, and as it has many facets, it has multifarious development, multifarious evolution, and its evolution was location specific, different location, done by different communities living in different parts of the world. So in this lecture, we looked into only on India. What is India's basic contribution to the material civilization that sustained the world civilization for thousands of years prior to the emergence of Europe as the hub center. Thank you. I would, although I have exceeded the time, but I would enjoy some response from you if you have any queries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very inspiring speech, for so aptly highlighting India's technical contribution in that age-old period towards the manufacturing industry, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now we would like to ask, we had a lot of technical glitches, sir, either side. So on the virtual podium, we had to make the best of it.
Okay.
Thank you to all the students also for their patience hearing. A lot of questions were, sir, actually posted there, but since the connection
Okay.
was lost in between, I don't know whether they are still visible. I could
No,
make out a
the
lot of
questions are not
questions.
visible. Questions are not visible. Prashant Babu
So,
was telling that there's a problem
right.
of, my computer and your system, or this.
Some
Suddenly it
coordination
is
there.
very slow, huh?
So, students, what we request to you is, yes, some questions are being posted, sir. I
Yes,
can
now
see.
I can
Let
see.
me,
Rup Kumar Bharma in ancient civil.
uh,
Oh, it just disappeared.
sir,
It
I'm
just
trying to
disappeared.
read it. I'm trying to read it, sir. Just a minute.
Yes. In ancient civilization, like, oh, it again disappeared. My system is not supporting this kind of thing because I use my
It's
computer only with the updated
disappeared.
typewriter.
Sir, you said that not much is, it's really disappearing.
Ah, the
It's actually
Samodhikari.
disappearing. Uh,
Ah.
Students just press the enter, no, after posting the questions.
Oh, somebody is willing to know something more about Urch, but that required me another lecture someday. I told your director that why don't you introduce Indian traditional, not traditional, actually Indian science and technology as a subject in your course. Then we can have some time. We can revive some industries, some interest. Actually, one thing you must not forget. Many of you must have heard of Joseph Needham. Joseph Needham. He was a leading chemical scientist of Europe. Leading chemical scientist. So, in course of one of his research finding, he went to China just for a few days, and then he got so much interested in the Chinese civilization that he spent the rest of his life in writing not a chemistry book, but in writing volumes of the history of Chinese civilization. That is the material history. Nothing of this kind has yet been done for India. So, at one point I have missed out to tell you that why technology and early technology matters into our reckoning, because in a this is a globalized world, but more globalized we are, more there is an urge to look more at into ourselves. And as you look, when I go to Europe, or when I go to other parts of the world, many people ask me, what is your location in terms of the movement of the civilizational movement of the world. So these are the points that identify our land, and that identify an Indian, a person like you and me, that yes, we carry forward this heritage. So that is the point I told you in the abstract, that this is not just an academic issue that only the researcher would matter. More and more of this kind we need to discuss, and I would look forward to those days when young scientists, young engineers would get interested in unearthing what the nature of material science and knowledge system the early India really stood for. We need an Indian type of Joseph Needham. Thank you. I'm
So
sorry.
if you
Yes.
permit, sir, we have like a lot of questions. I can access those. Can I just summarize, sir, one or two main questions that
Yes,
have been
yes, yes.
posted in the
Sure,
chat
sure,
box?
sure.
Sir, a student has written, Rajkumar
Uh,
Verma, in ancient civilization like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, there's mention
uh,
of a lot of weapons like the Brahmastra. So his question is, are these devices really existent? Or are they some mythological? Like, what is India's contribution to weapon? And another student is asking about guns,
this,
gunpowder.
uh, this, uh, this is very much difficult to state. But one thing is sure, that up to 13th century, India had a prosperous weapon trade. Uh, uh, I mean, uh, in the last 70 years, we just used to import weapons. So the India is a weapon-dependent country even today. From coming from weapons coming from other areas. But if we look back up to 13th century, India was a major center of weapon production. And whenever we talk of weapon production, it essentially involved the knowledge of producing better steel. Better steel. Since India produced better steel, I do not know. I do not believe in mystification. But what I believed, what I have told, and what I would tell the rest of my life is what is found in documents, in records. Because historian is supposed not to speak anything beyond records, anything beyond evidence. So we have evidence. We have early archaeological evidence of very thin and very sharp weapon system. And Ramayana, the Ramayana has not yet been properly periodized. Ramayana, it's not purely mythological. Certainly not a purely mythological. It's a mix of mythology and history. But the kind of weapons that have been used in Ramayana and its later day Mahabharata have not been properly researched upon. But I'm sure that in those days, certainly India could produce better weapons compared to other the adjoining countries or other regions, because India had the only advantage, the sole advantage of producing steel. This much today
Right,
to this.
right,
Next.
sir. Next question is an interesting question. How do we revive our culture and architecture without doing any bias to any particular religion or threat?
That's a very important question. That's a very important question, and that is the main point where we need to concentrate on. And I agree with the person who has put this question. Yes, if we
Rajneesh
want to,
Pathak. Rajneesh has put
yes,
forward this question.
yes, Rajneesh, I agree with you. The first thing we need to do is to demystify, our past. If you could successfully demystify our past, then only we can look into. This is one thing, and another thing, whatever you must feel like that whatever you write and whatever you are claiming must be recognized by people in other parts of the world. Otherwise, there is no point of telling or constructing a story. So, yes, the time has come, and if a historian, if a person from non-technical background could do this much, what I have done, you could do a lot. It's a matter of emphasis. Next.
Sir, another question is, at one point of time, sir, it was mentioned in the lecture that not much is known about ancient India's technological developments. But what
Yes.
this student is asking is, he has read about the Harappan and Mohenjo-daro architecture, and as
Very
per him,
good.
it was pretty advanced with well-planned cities, with canals and road networks. So his question is, do we not have an overview at all about ancient India's technological developments?
This is also a very good question. But at the very outset, I told you that I will concentrate mainly on metallurgy and the
Right,
assorted products, that is India's contribution to the world.
right,
Yes, I mean Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, they are is considered the wonderful cities, the earliest evidence of the best urban planning that was not even found in China, that was not even found in Egypt and Persia. Because in and the kind of geometrical sense that the structures displayed, geometry, hydrography, and also the building architecture, and the consciousness for sewage, public health. And you know that in Harappa particularly, we have multi-storied building also. Multi-storied means not like our days, but three-storied, two-storied. These houses were found. So this area I didn't touch, because I told you that it is not possible to take all these segments of technology in a lecture of, I suppose that it speak only on 70 minutes, only 70 minutes, and 20 minutes I
right.
will allow for questioning. Next.
The next
Next.
question is, sir, as you said, we have this large potential and reserve of metals. But then why did our industrial revolution come much after that of America and Europe?
Ah, I would request this person to read a book by
Sankul
a
Singh.
German scholar called uh, what is her name?
Sankul Singh.
Okay, okay, Sankul Singh, Mr. Singh. I would draw your attention to a book by a German scholar. The title of the book is Arrested Development. Arrested Development. That the course of development that the Indian history India was moving towards got arrested. Got arrested due to colonial intervention because India suffered from colonial rule. That's why I repeatedly told you to identify the year 1750, which distinguished the process of the beginning of the process of empire building. I mean, colonial empire building. So in 1750, India was much ahead of Britain, much ahead of Japan, and much ahead of China. China, but due to colonial intervention, the natural course of development got arrested, and India became in 200 years, India became the poorest country of Asia. So this is because of the colonial loot and destruction. Next,
So we have
next.
the glory of our ancient things like science and material. What can the government and us do to preserve
Yes.
these and present it to the world?
Oh, this has recently started. I will just give you one example since I have explained it a lot. Suppose for the 70 years, almost for 70 years, India was a major exporter of iron ore. So Japan imported iron ore from India, and Japan produced steel and sent steel to ourselves to India again. And this is repeated by China also. But if we look back to the records of our ancient period, early period, that up to 13th century, up to the 18th century, India was a major exporter of steel. So the question comes, why should India export iron ore instead of steel? So here, the governmental initiative, public initiative required that instead of concentrating on iron ores to earn foreign exchange, India should reduce our iron ore into steel and then sell it to the outside world at a much higher cost. So, this is a policy. This is a policy decision where we, these academicians, cannot have much access to. Sorry. Please, next.
So,
Next.
one student is asking, can only, in continuation to just one reply you gave, can only the British be blamed for our fallback in technological development? Were there any reasons? Let's say if the British had not come, would we still be the leading industrial pioneer?
This is a question of problematics. Or a question of possibilities also, in a sense. We don't know what would have happened. But I mean, the way India was producing from the beginning, the kind of the knowledge, the level of knowledge, and the connectivity between from the bottom to the top, in terms of innovation, in terms of their material use and commercialization, was first disrupted in the early medieval period. As you all know, India suffered from foreign invasions, repeated foreign invasions. That is also a point. That's also an important point, that why so many foreign invaders, so many hordes of foreign invaders do come to India. For what? For what? Because India was a golden bird, sone ki chiriya, as Nehru used to put it. So they came to loot. Then we have volumes of books on this, how they looted India. So there was first disruption which took place with this process of foreign invasion, and there was a major disruption with the coming of the British. The British, how much the British could be held responsible for our backwardness is a problematic. Cannot be definitely stated. But there is no doubt that what you see Britain today, or some 20 years back, because Britain is in very bad shape now, was absolutely due to the Indian subcontinent. Their entire wealth. In fact, I have seen in my writings that the Besmear process of steel was the knowledge, the technical knowledge flowed from the East. It did not evolve in Britain. So what did the British material scientists or the technical people do? Was that they concentrated they used their industrial knowledge, because in Britain was in a take-off stage at that time. So industrial knowledge to enable themselves the large-scale production of steel. What could not be done in India, the large-scale production, the Dutch had tried in a little way, in a restricted way, only to meet their demands in Indonesia, but not beyond. So there is no denying that Britain owed a great respect. But whether the industrial revolution, why industrial revolution? Why do you look up the industrial revolution? What is industrial revolution? Industrial revolution, there are different phases. The first phase of the industrial revolution took place in Britain. That's why it's called the first industrial revolution. And it involved only textiles and this iron and steel. After that, it shifted to Belgium. From Belgium, it shifted to Germany. And from Germany, it shifted to America. So industrial revolution also moved. But it could come to India also if there was no colonial intervention. Because India had wealth, had plenty of excess funds through trade. It was a gigantic trading community, very robust, enterprising. But these possibilities could not materialize due to this colonial intervention. Next.
So one last question, sir. We'll wind up
Yes.
the session. Interesting question, actually. As per most of the students, they have named a lot of structures. According to them, the ancient structures in India are much less popularized as compared to those of the European countries. Be it the Taj Mahal or be it the Leaning Temple of Huma, which is also tilted by 13.8 degree, one student has written. But still,
Yeah.
we are more popularizing the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So why is so?
That's the reason. That's the reason for the last 400 years. The unilinear pattern of history writing, civilization, and everything, everywhere. Nobody talked about Brazil. Brazil is another example. Brazil is another example, not as old as India, China, and Egypt. But Brazil is another example where archaeological evidence suggests that they had also reached a certain level of development. But then followed the Spaniards. They then went the Spaniards and they looted, they destroyed everything. Even they killed people in the way to vacate, as the way the Australians also did in that continent. So this is a major. It doesn't apply to India only. It applies to all other countries, the old civilization, the centers of civilization, which are only recently gaining focus, drawing focus, because the recent trend of writing in a technological history or other patterns is a kind of readjusting the focus that has been done. So you have already experienced, or you will see in near future, that there will be a process of rewinding the Western civilization. The focus of the civilization is now shifting. Instead of being a focus to hub center like Europe, it is now focusing. It is the focus is shifting to other parts of the world. I believe this will happen within a decade or two, because Europe is the eclipse of Europe has started. And once again, the world is become multi-focus instead of a centric focus. Next.
So thank you, sir. That was a brief summary of all the different queries the students had posted. Thank you once again. So that was Professor Smriti Kumar Sarkar, the Vice Chairman of the Indian Museum, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Burdwan. Thank you so much, sir. Despite your busy schedule, you could make out time in such a short notice and attend to the students. Sir, we thoroughly enjoyed your speech.
Hello, I have just another point.
Right,
Just
sir.
another point. That is, what is technological history? I would, if any one of you is interested, you can read my book. Of course, that did not deal with what I told you today. That relates to another aspect of technology. This book came from Oxford in 2014. The title of the book is Technology and Rural Change. Technology and Rural Change. So if you find, it will give you some idea how technology and culture are interrelated. Technology and society are interrelated. And how technology changed. So I am now working on this aspect. I believe I'll be able to produce a book on early Indian technologies very shortly. What I'm planning is a readable text that could come down, that could filter down to the lower level, and could be is a readable kind of thing. My intention is to spread the idea to the non-specialized people, young generations. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All the best wishes for your book, sir. And despite your busy schedule, sir, you could attend to us. Thank you so much for that. We had a lot of technical glitches, but despite that, sir, we could somehow make it work. And we sincerely hope, sir, post the COVID pandemic, we would have the opportunity of having you here in the campus so that we can have a face-to-face interaction between you and our dear students.
Yes, that is most important.
Exactly, sir. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, Debankon, do you have something to say? You have to type in the chat box because we cannot hear you. If you've raised a hand, you have to type in the chat box. If you're not audible.
Sir, I want to ask actually a question that what was the name of the book that you were telling about that arrested development? Can you please tell that? I could not hear that properly.
The title of the book is Arrested Development, nothing else. That is by Clive Dewey.
Thank you, sir.
Hmm.
That was the thing.
Yes.
So thank you so much, sir. We'll surely
Thank
meet
you.
one day face to face in this beautiful Shibpur campus, sir, and have the opportunity of interacting in person.
Thank you. I have visited your campus. Possibly you were there last time I delivered it in. I went to your studio and I spoke it from there. What is the number of participants today?
Sir, around 550 or so.
Okay, last year it was
Live.
much higher, 700 plus last year.
So the students are also having net connectivity issues, sir. So they're
Ah,
leaving in the meantime and all. They're like
yes,
joining
yes,
and leaving. These
yes,
things
yes,
continuously
yes.
happen in the virtual platform.
Okay,
So
okay.
thank you, sir. We'll take you
Thank you
leave
very
now.
much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank
And a quick announcement to all the students. The morning session is now ended, but we have another session in the afternoon, which will commence from 2:30 p.m. The popular talk will be delivered in the afternoon session by Professor Swaha Bhattacharya. She's a professor in the Department of Applied Psychology, University of Calcutta. So this is the same link in which the meeting will commence. We will once again meet sharp at 2:30 p.m. And some students were asking about the different curriculums and all. See, we have a departmental freshers lined up on Monday. The entire Monday will be regarding giving you a departmental overview. So whatever you have queries there, that will be addressed by your respective head of the department during the departmental freshers on Monday. Second thing is attendance. In the first week, your presence in this orientation program, we are recording this event. So your presence here will be regarded as your attendance. Somebody who is not attending the event will be marked as absent. Once the classes commence, then the respective instructors will be taking your attendance. So these are some of the common queries which I continuously saw. That's why I'm resolving them. Thank you once again. We'll meet with you sharp at 2:30 p.m. with Professor Swaha Bhattacharya on the dais. Let me end the meeting here. Thank you. Jai Hind.